The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
At that time, Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Begone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
We have just started our journey through this season of Lent. And often when you go to any church, especially Catholic Church, it is always mentioned, during this season of Lent, we are called to be more and more conscious of our sin. So the question comes, what does it mean to be living in sin? How do I know whether I'm in sin or not in sin? That's the question. Because we all have been trained, for whatever reason, to always think of our own sinfulness as against the 10 Commandments. When we were children, we were taught, especially when we had to go for confession, think of the 10 Commandments, see how many times you have gone against them, and thereby recognize whether you are living in sin or not. But when you go to the scriptures, my dear friends, it is completely a different idea to be in sin or living in sin. The first reading today, taken from the book of Genesis, chapter 2, has the second story of creation. So in this story, you can see that the author of the book of Genesis trying to convey to the people of Israel about what does it mean to be in sin. Now, mind you here, the 10 Commandments were given in the book of Exodus. But this is way before the time of Exodus or the people of Israel from Egypt. So prior to the 10 Commandments, what was described as sinfulness is to be found in the story of creation. We also have to remember that when you read the two creation stories, Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, the authors try to convey to the people of God that for God, everything that He created was good. He created everything and said, it is good. Which means life is good. Everything that God has given to us is good. Food is good. Drinking is good. Sex is good. Marriage is good. Relationships, everything is good. But then the author here reminds, if everything is good, if God wanted people to enjoy the fullness of His creation, what was sin then? In a symbolic way, the author conveys about Adam and Eve and the serpent, the symbol of evil, symbol of sin. What happens is that God created the Garden of Eden and He told Adam and Eve, you can enjoy everything that I have created. Food, drinking, intimacy, closeness, relationships, enjoy them. But He says, there is only one prohibition among so many permissions, one prohibition among so many freedoms given. That is, do not eat from the tree of good and evil. Sometimes we have this misconception that God did not want us to do anything that is evil, anything that is wrong. But what He said is, do enjoy everything, but don't ever eat from the tree of good and evil. In other words, what the author says is that everything in life is good, you can all enjoy it, but don't be the one who decides what is right and what is wrong. So the author conveys here in the first reading, God said, you can eat from the tree of life, which means life is given. Everything that life brings, given. Enjoy it. Eat from the tree of life, but do not eat from the tree of good and evil. Don't be the arbiter. Don't be the one who makes the decision what is right and what is evil. It is only mine. So, if you enjoy everything in life without becoming the one who decides what is right and wrong, then there is no sin. But then the conversation between Eve and the serpent is very clear. The serpent, in a very subtle way, tells her, did God tell you not to eat from any of the trees? Eve defends. No, He said, you can eat from any tree, and also from the tree of life, only from the tree of good and evil. So then the serpent tells her, if you eat from this tree of good and evil, if you become the one who decides what is right and wrong, if you are the arbiter of what is good and evil, you will be God yourself. So in other words, the sin was, don't try to play God with everything that God has given to you. That was sin. So therefore, my dear friends, we also have to ask ourselves the question, sin is not whether you are doing or following the Ten Commandments or not. That's a very limited understanding of sin and sinfulness. The foundational meaning of sinfulness is to ask yourself the question, you enjoy life, your food, your drink, your intimacy, your relationships, but is God the center of showing you what is right and wrong? That is why today, my dear friends, the Catholic Church says that we all have to, for example, uphold the sacredness of marriage. Marriage is sacred. It's not something to be playing around with. You cannot say that, it's good for me to have an extramarital affair. It's good for me to have adulterous relationships. It's good for me to decide what is right and wrong. No. Sacredness of life, the tree of good and evil, is decided by God. Don't play with it, but enjoy everything that God has given. Marriage, sex, relationships, closeness, intimacy. Enjoy everything, but don't try to decide what is right and what is wrong. What is condemned by God is to be avoided. What is upheld by God is to be followed. That's how we would find life in its fullness. The second reading today, taken from the letter of St. Paul to the Roman community. Paul is trying to convey to them the message that comes from the book of Genesis. Says, before the law came, there was sin. Again saying, God has given this life. God has created everything in life. Everything that we have been given, enjoy them, but never decide what is right and wrong by yourself. That was the message of the Old Testament from the book of Genesis about sinfulness. Therefore, he says, the entire experience of sin came from one man. When one person decides what is right and wrong, sin enters into all mankind. Because when one person says abortion is to be allowed, thousands and millions of people will follow it up and kill hundreds and millions of fetuses. Just only one man, one person, one judge. For example, in the United States of America, Roe and Wade, the famous decision by the Supreme Court, they allowed it so many years ago. And because of that, one man who decided it is right to kill children in the womb, so far, millions of children have been aborted. One man decides what is right and wrong. Killings become part of life. That becomes the norm of life. That is why Paul says one person is enough to decide what is right and wrong. Leaving God aside, there comes sin and there comes death. So Paul's message was, remember, it is only one person, a single individual, or a family, or a president, or a prime minister, or a cabinet of ministers, or someone who has some power in a family and says, this is right. We don't have to follow what God has said. We don't have to be conscious of what the message of the Bible is, what God is trying to teach his people. One person is enough. Sinfulness comes into this world, my dear friends. So therefore, in this season of Lent, it is good for us to ask ourselves, am I in my own life? Do I decide what is right and wrong? Do I do what I want? Or am I someone who is very conscious of what God has told us, what God has taught us about life, about food, about enjoying the luxuries of life, enjoying relationships in marriage, enjoying sexual closeness with each other, enjoying what the creation has given to us? Do I decide what is right and wrong, or I allow God to be the arbiter? And that is how, my dear friends, we are called to stay away from sinfulness. When you come to the gospel passage today, taken from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, we find Jesus himself, who is now on the mountain, facing his own inner truth in his own life. He is faced with 3 temptations. So you can compare and contrast Moses in the Old Testament, who was the liberator of the people of Israel from their slavery in Egypt, and now Jesus Christ, who is going to be the liberator for the people, all mankind, from sin and death. Both of them have to first recognize that they are not in sin. What is the first temptation? As the author says, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, and he has fasted for 40 days, like Moses was in the desert for 40 years. So Jesus is in the wilderness for 40 days. Having fasted, the devil comes from within himself. By the way, we also have to remember the meaning of the word, the devil. It comes from the Greek original word, diabolos. Dia, the root of the Greek language, is breaker, fragmenter, divider. of what is whole, what is complete. So the symbolic meaning of the word devil is that it is from within ourselves. It comes and fragments. It comes and breaks. What does it break? It breaks the wholeness of a man or a woman from within himself. So Jesus is fasting for 40 days. And he's hungry. Obviously, he's hungry. He wants to eat something. But the suggestion or the temptation is, why don't you eat now? Why don't you make the stones into bread? So Jesus brings back the principle that is in the Old Testament. I don't decide what is right and what is wrong. I am not here to play God. I am the Son of God. Yes, the devil also suggests you are the Son of God. But Jesus says, yes, I'm the Son of God, but I'm not God. I do not decide what is right and what is wrong. As Moses prepared himself in becoming the liberator, following God's commandment to fast and to complete his inner cleansing of himself, Jesus says, I'm not going to do it. I hold on to this principle. I do not play God. I do not break the wholeness that is within me when I'm one with the Creator. The second temptation, again, my dear friends, which is common to all of us, the temptation for pleasure, to have sex, to have extramarital affairs, to steal from others, to take away whatever that is possible from the entire community of people. Temptations. I can decide whether to steal or not. I can decide whether to give bribes or not. I can decide to be part of an evil empire or not. But the decision, the final arbiter is God. I decide. Where is my wholeness? Am I someone who is standing my ground? Am I upholding the foundational teaching of God? I am the center, not you. Jesus did that. And that is why Jesus overcame that temptation. The second temptation is for honor and glory. Again, my dear friends, all of us have this desire to bring glory to my own self. I am the man. I am the worker. I do what is important, so therefore I deserve to be at the center of everything. Again, the devil wants to fragment the wholeness from within Jesus, the liberator. Again, Jesus stands his ground and he says, no, I'm not going to do that. God is at the center of my life, not myself. I don't decide what is right and wrong. I only follow the integrity that comes when I give God the first place of my life. The third temptation is also for power. The temptation for power. What the devil says, you take over, you worship me and you take over the reins of this world. Power, my dear friends, is a massive temptation for all of us. To be the man or the woman who has power and exploit that power for my own advantage, for my own glory. But God's wholeness is when I do not use it for myself. It is always for the glory of God. The power is not mine, but God's. That is what makes us, my dear friends, become men and women who are wholesome within. That is to be a saint. That is to be a liberator. That is to be a follower of Christ. I do not allow myself to be broken from within. I do not allow my inner oneness to be fragmented just because everything is possible for me. Living in sin, in that sense, my dear friends, to lose that wholeness from within our own inner soul. The devil is the fragmenter I can allow myself to be the center of my desire for pleasure, desire for honor, desire for power, and allow myself to be fragmented and fragment everything around me as well. But I also have the desire, I also have the capacity to say no. I enjoy pleasure, I enjoy everything in life, but I uphold certain values. I gain honor for myself, but within the frame of God being the center of the honor that I have. I hold power, I gain power, I use power, not for myself, allowing myself to be fragmented and fragment the others. The devil, diabolus, breaking everything into pieces. I don't allow that. I only uphold the power of God, the ultimate holder of power. True liberation comes, my dear friends, in that sense, when I have found the center of myself and allow God to be at the center. No money, no power, no sexual exploitations, no advantages, no any privileges, all my wealth, nothing to take God from the center of my life. That is, my dear friends, the deeper meaning of being a sinless man or a sinless woman. The question, my dear friends, have you found that inner wholeness with God within your life and within my life?